Thanks for tuning in to Jets Football Talk on the Our-Lads Football Network. It's inside Our-Lads NFL depth charts as we recap day one of the NFL draft for the New York Jets and preview day two. And then we'll be back on Sunday to recap the entire draft. So don't forget to tune in for that. We'll probably post that on our YouTube channel and on the ourlads.com website by late Sunday morning, early Sunday afternoon, the latest. Jan Levine joining me from RotoWire. Jan, the Jets did, in fact, move up in the draft, but they didn't move into the first round from the second round. They moved up from the first round earlier into round one. And let's start with the good news that the Jets and Zach Wilson, we're going to have more than enough time to talk about him. But moving up, what did you think until Jeremiah let the cat out of the bag, which he knew something? I was scrambling going, what on earth could he possibly be trading up for? I had no idea who he was trading up for at that point until Jeremiah said it was going to be Vera Tucker. And I was like, okay, I guess that's who it's going to be.
Yeah, it was interesting. So, we talked a little about whether or not they'd go running back, and we all knew they weren't moving up to 14 to get a running back, right?
No.
We talked, they already had their quarterback, so it wasn't like they were moving up to get Mac Jones, who went the next pick.
Nope. And they weren't, and you didn't think
you weren't
trying to get
taking
ahead of the Patriots for Vera Tucker.
Right. You weren't taking a cornerback to that high in the draft, even though Newsome would have been a guy they might have done. I don't think they were
I was thinking about that too, yeah.
Smith had already been gone wide receiver wise, right? So the Eagles moving up to 10, sniping the Giants a little bit, took him. And then I started looking online, and a lot of people had predicted that Vera Tucker was a guy that Douglas had his eye on for a while.
Yep.
The only two things I've heard in terms of negative associated trade, one was taking a guard that early, though correct. You put him on the left side with Becton, and you have a pretty darn good left side, you hope, for many, many years to come.
That's the positive, and let's stick with the positives first, because it's definitely a positive.
Right. B, they viewed him as the best offensive guard tackle in the draft.
Yep.
And they moved up to make sure they got him, so they knew they weren't slipping all the way to 23. The only other negative I heard is the value, right? If you do the value chart, they probably gave up an additional 40 extra points by giving up a 2 third-rounders, right? But on the flip side, I was thinking about this morning. Look at what Chicago gave up to go from 20 to 11, right? They gave up a first this year. Okay, part of it. A first next year, a fourth, and a fifth. Now, if Douglas, and we've talked about this before, you've been probably more adamant about this than me, that Douglas is an offensive line guy and knows his offensive line and knows what he wants to build with his offensive line. If he views Tucker as that far and above better than anybody else that's out there, and he wants to make sure he's getting them, look, he paid a little. Look, would I have rather seen a third and a fourth? Yes, because having the 86 probably, because you would have had to give up the 66.
But the Jets did get back another pick, though.
Yeah, you got 143 back, which is fine, right? Yeah. So you have a couple of fourth rounders now, but now you have a gap between 34 and 107.
Yes.
Between
Unless
your next
they
couple
want to trade
picks,
back
right?
in, which they could. They have all the draft capital in the world to move back up.
They could, right? And we'll get to this because we'll get to the guys who are available at 34, right? And there's a couple of guys who Douglas may have his eye on, but it wouldn't shock me also if he tried to slide down a little bit. Although I got to be honest, if JOK is sitting there, in my opinion, you plug him into this defense as kind of a utility guy, can play nickel, can play linebacker, can move up and play on the line a little bit. He's got speed. He's got talent. He's a guy who a lot of people predicted to go top 15, top 18 in the draft and slid. If for some reason he doesn't go to Jacksonville at 33, it's awfully hard to trade down when a guy with that level of potential talent is sitting there.
Yeah, and I agree with everything you're saying as far as the positives. You have to, as I've said a ton of times, you have to give Joe Douglas the benefit of the doubt. And again, just imagine they now have that left side of the line, and as soon as they decide, and you know what, you know who this pick could also be, or if they trade down, it could be Dickerson. It could be the center who could also play guard until he slides back over to center maybe in a year or two. So that's also possible. because eventually he's going to get another offensive. He's going to get at least 2 more offensive linemen in the next year, I would say, for the right side of the line. We thought that the guard position would be taken care of later, but again, if he does value this guy as a surefire star top 10 pick that he does, then okay, that's going to be pretty awesome to have an offensive line that is starting to look pretty imposing.
Yeah, I mean, the other name I've heard a little bit is Jenkins is heard. I've mentioned a little bit. I've heard more the wide receiver mentioned a little bit potentially if they want to add guys into it from a talent pool perspective. I think Jenkins may be a little bit lower than that, but I know a lot of people are
There
high
are
on him.
5 offensive linemen that are still on board that they can go with. You mentioned Jenkins. I mentioned Dickerson. There's Mayfield. There's Carman, and there's Radunz. So they have 5 guys. And by the way, if you want Mayfield, if you want Carman or Radunz, you can trade down. You might even be able to trade down for a couple of the other guys. So if they do want to go offensive linemen, I don't think they should stay where they are. I think they should try to move down a little bit. But then again, it all depends on what they think about the player. I'd be surprised if they went with a wide receiver at this point. I know you mentioned Moore, Marshall, Rondell Moore, Elijah Moore. They all have speed. And it's really hard to pass up on guys, especially the Moore guys, because they run 4.3 like twos. Yep. And that's kind of hard to pass up.
Absolutely. But like I said, if JOK is sitting there, I think that's a guy. Look, do they need help there? No, we look, they're going to have to gain cornerbacks, right? They now kind of probably taking themselves out of the mix. I don't think there's anybody there at 34 you're probably taking.
Probably not.
You're probably looking at a 4th round guy unless you move some capital to trade back up or trade in if a guy's that you really want. But if you can add a linebacker like him or whatever you want to call him, that's a lot of talent and a guy who can fill in so many places. And we've talked about, look, their linebacking crew, you would think, obviously, you kind of hoping Mosey's healthy, right?
Better be.
Right? I mean, if you look at their linebacker depth chart, right? You look at their linebacker depth chart. You add him to your linebacker depth chart, and it looks an awful lot better than it did before.
Absolutely. And look, we talked about this the other day. Saleh did not have a lot of talent in the secondary last year, and he was still able to get an awful lot out of that defense and didn't even have his best defensive players up front either. They were banged up. Right. So it might be one of those things where they're like, hey, man, we're going to try to win games, which I love, in the trenches. We're going to try to win games and be powerful on both sides of the line of scrimmage. On defense, we're going to have a tough front 7. So we don't have to have all-star guys in the secondary because they're not going to have to cover so long. So even if you do add, a hybrid, basically, which is what this kid is, that just makes your front 7 that much more dangerous, and I'm all for it. So
absolutely, same here. Yeah. No question about it.
Because look, you can't keep adding more young corners. We just talked about that too the other day. How many young corners can you have? There has to be a strategy about whether it's Richard Sherman or Poole or another trade or some other veteran, but it's not really, to me, a big surprise that they're not going corner early.
No. Look, Newsome went 26. I thought the Browns did a nice job grabbing him there, and once he was gone, there's a couple others that came off the board. I mean, the big names that you potentially wanted. Farley ended up going earlier than I think you and I both thought also, right? We talked about him as maybe being a guy late when the Jets picked or maybe in the second round, given some of the injury risk because he's coming off the surgery. But where he went was a little bit earlier than they would have thought, right? So with both of those guys gone, I don't know if there's anybody that stands out to them that they view as, I have to go get this guy immediately. He's a guy that I have to go pick up. So look, he's going to go best player available given the holes that they have right now. The question becomes is the guy who they get at 34, or if they're at the 34th pick, is he going to stay there based upon the value of the guy that's there? Or, as you mentioned, if there's 4 or 5 guys he groups in a similar bucket and he can slide down and acquire another pick, we know that Douglas has no qualms about doing that. We saw it last year with Mims when he slid down. Granted, he missed out on Claypool, but he slid down last year and picked up Denzel Mims and was able to get the guy who they wanted at that pick, supposedly. So he's got a couple of options there. I do think a lot of it's going to depend on who Jacksonville goes with, or if Jacksonville trades the pick, who ends up being selected 1 pick before them.
Now, and by the way, don't forget Ourlads Guide to the 2021 NFL Draft. You order this at ourlads.com. This is the best time to do it. You can find out all about Vera Tucker and all the other players the Jets are going to draft or sign in the next couple of days. And again, we'll talk more about this. We'll go inside some of these scouting reports on our Sunday show for sure. All right, now let's wrap up with a couple of the negatives, and that is trading up to get a guard. That is one of those situations where, man, you better be right. That's it. You had just better be smarter than most everyone else, because even our lads had Vera Tucker at the bottom of the first round. There were a lot of people who felt he was a late first round guy. But as you said, hey, if you, and this is what we always talk about, it only takes one GM, and Joe Douglas might be that one GM that fell in love with the guy and is like, I don't care what anybody else thinks. I think this guy's a top 10 guy. I'm going to make sure I can get him. Las Vegas was a few spots back, and I'm sure they probably go Vera Tucker because they ended up with Leatherwood, who, by the way, was a 3rd or 4th round grade from our lad. So it could have been a lot worse. So that's probably where they stood. It's just, again, you better hit a home run here. And this better be a guy that will line up with Becton. And so 5-6 years down the road, when the Jets are hopefully hoisting a Super Bowl trophy, we're going, see, this is kind of where it all began when he made the gutsy move, but nobody thought was something that he should do at the time. And look at what he's built here. And I certainly hope that that's exactly how it's going to turn out.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all hoping the same way. Look, I mean, moving up to 23 to 14, we talked about that. Wouldn't be shocked if he moved up to move back. Moving up to get the guard was something that is not commonly done. The 2 picks he gave up a tremendous amount of value, right? Like I said, if you gave up the 1 pick and then a 4th round, there might have been a bit more quote unquote palatable. But look,
weren't you nervous when you heard the trade? And the first thing that I was thinking about was what you said before about the Bears. The first thing I was thinking about was, oh no, he has 3 first-round draft picks next year. He just didn't trade one of those first-round draft picks to move up here, did he? That's what I was thinking.
Right. No, I was trying to figure out what he gave up. I didn't think they would give up the first. I mean, Douglas doesn't seem to be the guy who would give up a first rounder in a type of a deal like this. I mean, even especially to move up, because I don't think there was anybody who warranted moving up to get giving up the number 1, except for, look, Chicago felt they got their QB of the future. I mean, in this case, like I said, it looks like Douglas is viewing, I have my left side of my line hopefully solidified.
Yep.
I mean, look, he can play tackle, but he's much better at guard, Vera Tucker. You put him hopefully next to Becton, and the 2 of them, you'll see a lot of handoffs to the left side of the line.
You think so?
Yeah. This year, given
running
the guys.
back by committee. Look, remember, we talked about that too. This is now the plan. They're going to go running back by, and thank goodness the Jags took Etienne, and he did not fall to the Bills.
Yeah, the first thing I thought of yesterday was Greg's going to be happy he didn't go to the Bills. Although I've seen people pan the Etienne pick because now they have 3 running backs there.
Who
in Jacksonville?
Nah, yeah, but they had to go. Yeah, but Urban Meyer wants people speed. Urban Meyer is he's gonna just imagine you're a Jags fan now. You have Trevor Lawrence and Etienne in your backfield. I mean, come on, that's an awesome move by Urban Meyer. Yeah. So anyway, there are some questions, but I think the reason why it's acceptable since he's a guard is because of the fact that he had experience as a tackle this past year, and he graded out equally well a tackle as he did at guard. That's the reason I think they move up and get him. Not just because you pigeonhole him at guard and that's it. No, he's a versatile enough player, and the Jets are one of those teams that could use, hey, you know what? If Fant goes down, what happens? Well, if Fant goes down, maybe we can move Vera Tucker over to right tackle.
Yep, and I think that's probably part of the plan, but I do think obviously the game plan right now seems to be plug him right next to Mr. Becton.
Yep.
And you have your left side of your line.
Oh, and the other negative is he's from USC. We haven't done very well with USC players lately.
Cadigan agreed. Wasn't Marvin Powell USC?
Dude, you're going back far. But look.
It's not like
Adoga,
the offensive lineman.
We have Adoga. We have Adoga who hasn't done anything yet. We have Darnold who's gone. We have Leonard Williams who did nothing for us, basically, that he's doing for the Giants.
Right. Different regimes.
Yeah.
So different regimes.
Yeah. So USC hasn't really. No. Yeah. I'm not talking about the regimes. We're just talking about the Jets. And us. Yeah. So it's USC hasn't worked out for us, but hopefully we'll get one right. So
time to break the mold.
Yeah. All right, Jan, appreciate it. We'll talk to you again on Sunday morning. And when we do, we are going to wrap up the entire draft. Are you going to comment on the draft on your Twitter feed?
I'm sure I'll comment a little bit tomorrow night and today also, hopefully when I see the first pick.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good. We'll and that's at what time? 7:30, 8?
7. I think it's 7 or 7:30 today. Same time
tonight.
I think. Technically 7, but we'll see if they actually start at 7 like yesterday. We started at 8.
All right. Sounds good, Jan. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you on Sunday.
Sounds good.